It had been a busy summer on the island of Sodor. Lots of passengers had come and gone, and lots of freight had been delivered, keeping all the engines very busy. Usually the engines were happy during the summer, but this year they were not. Donald and Douglas, the Scottish twin engines, have been away for several months now, due to Donald taking on his own boiler sludge at the water tower and help being needed on their old Scottish railway. While they were away, Henry and Murdoch had to take their goods trains for them. They managed well for a while, but soon began to show signs of struggling. The Fat Controller was in his office. He was looking at his timetable. Yes, that'll work, he said. He picked up his hat from the hat stand and walked out of his office. He then drove away to Brendam Docks. The Fat Controller found Edward at Brendam Docks. He was speaking sternly to Bill and Ben. "I'm ashamed of you," said Edward. "The docks is no place to be playing tricks. In fact, nowhere on a railway is safe for playing tricks." "We're sorry, Edward," said the twins. "It's not me you need to be apologising to," said Edward. "It's Salty. It's his dockyard you're making a mess of after all." Bill and Ben agreed, and they scurried off to find Salty to apologise to him. Edward was about to puff away too, when he saw the Fat Controller in front of him. "Good morning, Edward," he said. "You look well." "Well, as well as I can be working with those twins," said Edward. "They're a nightmare. They've been playing tricks all day and nearly made Cranky drop his pallet of crates." "Well, we've known for a long time those two are troublesome, haven't we?" "Indeed we have, sir," chuckled Edward. "Anyway, can I help you with anything?" "As a matter of fact, you can, Edward. Now you know Donald and Douglas have been away for several months, and Henry and Murdoch will be taking their goods trains for them." "Yes, sir, I do. And if you don't mind me saying, I think they could do with the rest, sir." "Quite right, Edward, which is why I'm coming to you. I would like you to take their goods trains for a few days. Your timetable shows that you work here not long after the goods trains are due to arrive here at the docks. So it will be perfect for you, wouldn't it?" "Indeed, sir," puffed Edward. "I'd love to help out in any way I can." "Excellent. Your first train will be waiting tomorrow at 12 o'clock at Elsbridge Station." "Goodbye, Edward," said the Fat Controller. "Goodbye, sir," called Edward, and as the Fat Controller walked away, Edward steamed off to finish his work at the docks. The next day, at 12 o'clock sharp, Edward arrived at Elsbridge and backed down onto his goods train. The guard blew the whistle and waved his green flag. Edward puffed and panted. The train was very heavy. Edward's driver was worried it might be too heavy for him. But at last, Edward managed to get the train moving and out onto the open line. Edward really enjoyed being out on the main line. He got to see places he hadn't seen for many years, like the Sodor Suspension Bridge and Henry's Tunnel. Before long, Edward had arrived at the docks. He was uncoupled from the trucks and ran onto a short siding to wait for Bill and Ben to arrive. For the next few days, Edward took lots of goods trains. And every day, Edward had fun. The next day, Edward was at Elsbridge Station when Toby the tram engine puffed in. "Hello, Toby," puffed Edward. But Toby didn't reply. "Toby?" asked Edward. "What's the matter?" But Toby still didn't reply. "Oh, I get it," said Edward. "You're still upset about what happened a few months ago, aren't you?" A few months ago, Toby had gone to the works, leaving Edward to take his milk train. However, Fergus told Edward he had too much work to do. So Edward took both Fergus and Toby's milk train at once and took a different route to Toby. When Toby came back, he couldn't handle the heavy train and the new route and ended up running late. As a result, the Fat Controller gave the milk run to Edward. Toby had been cross with Edward ever since. "I hope you realise, Toby, that I was only helping a friend," said Edward. "Just like I'm doing now, helping Henry and Murdoch with their trains as they're overworked, just as Fergus was back then." "Yes, but your so-called help cost me my favourite job," puffed Toby. "It was alright for you, but I wasn't strong enough to pull all those tankers." "I'm not exactly the strongest engine either, Toby," huffed Edward. "I could barely handle those tankers myself, but I was just trying to help a friend. Like now. I can barely pull this train, but I'm doing it for Henry and Murdoch, not to mention Donald and Douglas." Toby said no more. He just puffed crossly away. Edward puffed away too, feeling slightly sorry for Toby. The next day when Toby arrived at Wellsworth, he was still cross. "Bother that Edward," he said to himself. Toby was so busy being cross at Edward that he didn't take on any water at the water tower. As Toby neared the viaduct, he began to feel thirsty. Soon, he ground to a halt. "What's the matter?" he cried. "You've run out of water," his driver told him. "We should have filled up at Wellsworth." "Oh no," thought Toby. "What am I going to do now?" Farmer McCall had seen everything and went to telephone for help. When Edward arrived at Wellsworth station, he found the station master flagging him down. "Toby has run out of water on the viaduct. Can you push him to Maron, please?" "Oh dear," thought Edward. "Of course, I'll do my best to help." And he set off to help Toby. Soon, Edward puffed up behind Toby. He was coupled up and started to push. Toby wasn't happy that Edward was pushing him, but he could do nothing about it. Edward had to work hard to push Toby and pull his heavy goods train. Toby soon began to realise just how hard Edward was working. At last, Edward pushed Toby into Maron station. "Thank you for helping me, Edward," said Toby. "I know it can't have been easy for you." "No, it wasn't," laughed Edward. "But I was just happy to help." "I'm sorry I've been cross with you these last few months," said Toby. "I should have known you were just trying to help a friend." "Just like now," said Edward. Toby smiled and rang his bell happily. Edward smiled too and whistled back. He was happy he and Toby were friends again.